Yeah, good day viewers. Once again, you're welcome to your class on English grammar. And then today we will be looking at what we call the basic simple sentence patterns. Basic simple sentence patterns. As you can obviously see on the board, we have. Now, but before I go fully into this topic, I want you to know one or two things that for you to have a better understanding of this topic, then you might have needed to have known some of the subjects and sentence elements rather. That is, you need to have known what your subject is, what your predicator is, what your object is, what your complement is, and then what your adverb is. So if you do not know all of these sentence elements before now, then I would actually advise you to go watch one of our videos on sentence elements or clausal elements. You get it? So now don't let us waste much time on that. Now, so we have the basic simple sentence patterns. That tells you that normally the English sentence can be simple and can be non-simple. Yeah, those are the two basic divisions of the English sentence. It can be simple and it can be non-simple. So when a sentence is simple, then it can also be basic or non-basic. So when the English sentence is simple, it can be basic and it can be non-basic. So viewers, note this. First of all, the English sentence can be simple and it can be what? Non-simple. Number two, if the English sentence is simple, then it can be basic or it can be non-basic. Do you get it? So today we'll actually be looking at what we call basic simple sentence patterns. So sit back, relax, and learn with us. Now, before I go fully into that also, I need you to know that there are a number of scholars that have come up with a number of patterns that they work with. One of these scholars, we have the scholars by the name Quirk and Grimbaum. Now, Quirk and Grimbaum actually proposed just 7 patterns. Yeah, 7 patterns. That means that for Quirk and Grimbaum, we have just 7 patterns of basic simple sentences. And then, however, if you look at what they actually did, it's still also not totally different from what we actually have here, because according to this one that we have here, you could see that we actually gave out 9 patterns here. We're actually looking at it from the other perspective of another scholar by the name Bolaji Aremo. So Bolaji Aremo actually proposed 9 patterns of basic simple sentences. However, like I said, there is not much difference between what Quirk and Grimbaum actually proposed and what Bolaji Aremo actually proposed. As a matter of fact, the only difference is that what Bolaji Aremo would have called pattern 5 was subsumed under pattern 4. So instead of me naming SPC noun and explicit adjective, ADJ, or explicit nominal and explicit adjective, Bolaji actually call them, Quirk and Grimbaum rather, actually call them SPCs. Do you get it? And for pattern 8 and 9 also, instead of me saying explicit nominal, pattern 7 and 8 rather, instead of me saying SPOC nominal and SPOC adjective, Bolaji actually, Quirk and Grimbaum rather again, actually call them SPCs generally. So you see why it didn't have 9 patterns. However, I feel like the patterns of Bolaji Aremo are actually simpler to learn and to know and to memorize. Meanwhile, don't get it wrong, our goal here is actually not to make you memorize any of this, but actually to make you have in-depth understanding of all of this. Do you get it? You must be greatly demystified. So let's go into this. So according to what we have here, you could see that we actually have 9 patterns. So we have what we call the SP, subject and predicator. We have what we call the SPO, that is subject, predicator, and object. We have what we call the SPOO, that's the subject, predicator, object, and object. Actually, the first object would be an indirect object, while the second object would be a direct object. We also have pattern 4, which is SPC nominal. So SPC nominal, you have your subject, your predicator, and your complement intensive. Yeah, so by complement here we actually mean complement intensive. Actually, we have what we call the complement intensive and what we call the complement extensive, but for the sake of simplicity we would just call it complement here, which I said is we mean complement intensive. Don't worry, as time goes on we would explain some of these things also better, but like I actually said initially, if you need better understanding of all of these terminologies, try to go watch our video on sentence elements. Do you get it? Exactly. So we also have what we call the SPC adjectival, that's your subject, predicator, and complement also. Then we also have what we call SPA, that's your subject, predicator, and adverb. Subject, predicator, and adverb. We also have what we call the SPOC nominal, that is your subject, predicator, object, and complement. Subject, predicator, object, and complement. We also have pattern 8 also, SPOC adjectival, subject, predicator, object, and complement also. And then we have what we call SPOA, that is your subject, predicator, object, and adverb. Now, don't be confused with pattern 4 and 5 or pattern 7 and 8. Trust me, when we say SPC nominal, the complement there that is in pattern 4 is a nominal group or a noun phrase. And for SPC adjectival, the complement there is an adjectival group or an adjectival phrase. So there's nothing to be bothered or worried about, and that's the same. That the same goes for pattern 7 and 8 too. The complement in pattern 7 is a nominal complement, that is a nominal group or a noun phrase, and that of pattern 8 is also an adjectival group or phrase. Do you get it? So if you also are confused about the terminology group or phrase, I would still also advise you to go watch our video on the topic groups and phrases. Do you get it? So that's just it. Now let's go fully into the topic, but as we deal with the patterns one after the other. So do we get it? So the patterns one after the other. So let's go pattern 1 this time around. Pattern 1, yeah. Now when we say pattern 1 sentence, we said it's what? The SP, that is subject and predicator. The subject and the predicator. Now let me make this known to you that the predicator in some other instances or by some other scholars is also called the verb. As a matter of fact, it's the verb that actually realizes the predicator. So if you hear it from someone else or you actually read it in another book and it's referred to as the verb, don't get it wrong. Don't come and say, but I actually watched the video that said it's predicator. No, it's the same thing. So you could call it the verb or you could call it predicator. I'm not going to go into theories of grammar here to now be telling you that it's traditional grammar, that grammarians that actually named it this or that. No, don't be confused. Just know that what we call predicator here can also be regarded as verbs by some other scholars. Do we get it? Yeah, I believe we do. Thank you so much. So, pattern 1, we have SP. Now, I will try to actually write this so that you don't get confused. So my subject will be within this column of subject, what my predicator will be within here. Do you get it? So now, first example, we have she danced. She danced. Now, if you look at this, you have your subject as she and you have your predicator as what? Danced. Let's look at another example. John slept. So John slept. John as your subject, slept as your predicator. The third example, this place stinks. This place stinks. So that's another example where your subject is this place and your predicator is what? Stinks. Then we also have a fourth example. We have ice melts. Ice melts. Ice melts. So that's a fifth example. Again, we have glass breaks. Glass breaks. Then a sixth example, we have the door opened. The door opened. The door opened. A seventh example. Do you need a seventh example? Of course, I think you do. So a seventh example, we have the bell rang. The bell rang. And an eighth example, and which is our final example here, we have water boiled. Oh, sorry, let's just make it this way. We have, let's just say, the water boiled. So the water boiled. So that's just it. So those are examples that we have under pattern 1. Pattern 1, SP, we have She danced. She is a subject, danced is a predicator. We have John slept. Sorry, John is a subject, slept is a predicator. We have this place, thanks. This place is a subject, thanks is a predicator. We have ice melts. Ice is a subject, melts is a predicator. We have glass breaks. Glass is a subject, breaks is a predicator. We have the door opened. The door is a subject, opened is your predicator. We have the bell rang. The bell is a subject. We have rang as your predicator, and then we have the water boiled. The water is subject and boiled your predicator. Do we get it? Now, take note of this. Take note of this. Now, the first thing you should take note of is that the predicator or verb in pattern 1 is known as an intransitive verb. Intransitive, yeah, an intransitive verb. Now, what do we mean by an intransitive verb? That is a verb that cannot take an object. A verb that cannot take an object. So, when you have a verb that cannot take an object, that verb is known as what? An intransitive verb. So, a verb that cannot take an object is known as an intransitive verb. Do you get it? So that is take note of that. An intransitive verb is what? A verb that cannot take an object. So you see that all of these sentences, there is no possible way of us trying to fix an object into them. You can't say John slept something. You can't sleep. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. So John slept is complete on its own without an object. This place stinks. You can only now describe how it stinks. That would talk about maybe you're giving it an adverbial of manner, like, oh, this place stinks terribly. Now that is on a different note. Do you get it? It can take an optional adverbial, but it can never take an object. Do you understand that? Yes. You can say ice melts. Ice melts, but ice itself cannot melt something else. Do we get it? You can say the bell rang, but the bell cannot ring something. Do we understand that? So that's what I mean by an intransitive verb. It cannot take an object. Another thing you should note about the, and then one thing we usually say about intransitive verbs is that the common feature of most intransitive verbs is that they aren't always action verbs. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot see action verb. For instance, danced is an action verb. Slept is an action verb. Do you get it? Dance, I mean, an action was performed. Slept, an action was performed. Do you get it? But then, it's not all the time. It's not all the time. However, like I said, once in a while, they may actually be action verbs. However, most times, they usually show the attribute of the subject. Yeah, they usually show the attribute of the subject. Look at the example, this place stinks, for instance. Now, stinks is not an action that was performed by this place. It's not like this place performed an action. Rather, this place actually, stinks is actually showing an attribute or a feature or a characteristic of this place. Like this particular place, the present attribute of this place is that it stinks. Do you get it? Same goes for ice melts. Melts is not an action that was performed by ice. Rather, melting, the action of melting is an attribute of all ice, or better say an attribute of ice. Do we get it? That's just, and that goes with glass breaks also. Break, the verb break is actually an attribute of glass. Do we get it? Boil, the verb boil is also an attribute of water. Do we understand? So those are the things you should take note of under intransitive verbs. So that's the first note. Now another note you should note is that now the pattern can also be expanded. Actually, yes, the pattern can be expanded. Now what do we mean by expansion is this. Now don't forget, we actually said this pattern contains only the subject and the predicator. Yes, it contains only the subject and the predicator. However, you should note that we can actually include the possibility of an optional adverbial. Yes, we can include the possibility of an optional adverbial. So let me do that. For instance, some of the predicators there, an instance is the verb stinks. Now I could actually say that this place stinks terribly. Do you get it? I could say that. So saying that this place stinks terribly means that I have given it an adverbial. However, that adverbial is known as an optional adverbial. Optional adverbial in the sense that without it, the sentence is still complete. Now, I told you that pattern 6 is SPA. Now, the question you should ask yourself is that what's the difference between this place stinks, pattern 1, that has an adverb, which is terribly, and another sentence that is pattern 6 that would obviously have an adverb. The idea is that the terribly in pattern 1 here is an optional adverb, and what we mean by optional adverb is that it is without it the sentence is still complete. Yes, without your optional adverbial, the sentence is still complete. Another feature of the optional adverbial is that it is mobile. It is mobile. Now, one feature you should note about all adverbials is that all adverbials are mobile. So terribly here is an optional adverbial. If I also say something like glass breaks easily, for instance, let's say glass breaks easily. Now glass breaks easily. Do you get it? So easily also is an optional adverbial. We don't need it in this sentence for the sentence to be complete. As a matter of fact, you saw that I actually already completed all of the sentences before now. Do you get it? Let me give another one. John slept. Now let's look at John slept. Now John slept, we could actually say John slept like a baby. Now John slept like a baby. Now, like a baby is an adverbial phrase, as you can see. And then before we actually included it, wasn't the sentence complete in itself before? Of course it was. So that tells you that the presence of an optional adverbial is not necessarily needed. Do we get it? And then don't forget that adverbials are said to be very mobile and fluid. I believe you should have forget about adverbials before now, and you should have known these particular features of adverbials. So, and one of the characteristics or feature of optional adverbials is that they are mobile. I could say John, like a baby, slept. Do we get it? I could say the door opened of its own accord, or the door of its own accord opened. The door of its own accord open. Do we get it? So I could say the door of its own accord open. I could say the door opened of its own accord. I could say of its own accord, comma, the door open. Do we get it? I could switch it. That is the feature of optional adverbials. They are extremely mobile. While if it were actually the adverbial that we have in pattern 1 and pattern 6 rather, it is not mobile because it is an obligatory adverbial. Do we understand? So pattern 1, SP, subject and predicator. The verb is usually an intransitive verb. However, it can take the presence of an optional adverbial, and an optional adverbial is said to be what? Mobile or fluid. That is, it can be anywhere. Another feature of optional adverbials is that you can have more than one optional adverbials in a sentence. Do we get it? I could say she danced happily yesterday. Yeah, she danced happily yesterday. Now look at it. She danced happily yesterday. I'm coming. Now she danced happily yesterday. So that is that I can have as many as possible optional adverbials in a sentence. And don't forget I said that fluid. I could say yesterday she danced happily. Do we get it? Because optional adverbials are mobile. So I could have it at one point or the other. I could have it before the subject. I could have it after the subject. I could have it with. I could have it even after the predicator. Wherever they are optional adverbials, they are fluid, and we could have more than one of them in a sentence. More than one of them in a sentence. So that's all about pattern 1 sentences. Let's go to pattern 2, which is what? The SPO. Pattern 2, SPO. That is your subject. I'll try to use acronyms here. Your predicator. Oh, sorry, I forgot again. And then your object. Subject, predicator, and object. So we have. Let's also do this. SPO. SPO. So option A, or example A, we have Gloria ate the food. Gloria ate the food. Gloria ate the food. So that's example A. Second example, oh sorry, I actually wrote Gloria. It's meant to be here without the L. So take note of that. So we have second example. We can do it. We can do it. That's the second example. We have third example. We have the children were playing. The children were playing football. The children were playing football. Now the fourth example, we have his father would have shut the door. His father would have shut the door. So look at all of these examples. You'd see that there is a subject, there is a predicator, and there is an object. Do we get it? So for the first sentence, what's the subject? That's Gloria, right? Exactly. For the second subject, for the second sentence, what's the subject? We. For the third sentence, what's the subject? The children. And for the fourth sentence, what's the subject? His father. Do we get it? So those are the subjects. Then for the first sentence, what's the predicator? It. For the second one, what's the predicator? Can do. That's we have an auxiliary plus a lexical verb there. The third one, what's the predicator? We're playing, an auxiliary, which is were, and then playing, which is the lexical verb. And then we have the last sentence, which is would have shot. Would have being the auxiliary, and then shot, S-H-U-T, being your lexical verb. And then we have the objects too. The food is the object of the first sentence. It is the object of the second sentence. Football is the object of the third sentence. And then the door is the object of the last sentence. Do we understand that? So that's just, it's as simple as that. Now, one feature that you should note about the predicator here is that the predicator is a transitive verb. Transitive verb. Now you remember that under pattern 1 we said that the predicator is an intransitive verb, and we said that it cannot take an object. So this one, transitive, can take an object. It can take an object. So that's just it. So the transitive verb can take an object. And another thing about the transitive verb is that it can either be monotransitive or it can be ditransitive. So the one we have in pattern 2 right now is a monotransitive verb. Monotransitive verb. That is just one object. It can take only one object. And as you can see, we actually have just one object in your pattern 2. So the first thing is that pattern 2 contains a monotransitive verb. That is a verb that can take an object, one object. Another thing is that, of course, you know that your subject, according to our class on sentence elements, your subject is the performer of an action, while the object is the receiver or the undergoer of an action. So the subject is a performer of an action, object is the receiver of an action. Like I said earlier, if you want to understand this better, go to the topic on sentence elements. So now, the object in your pattern 2 sentence is usually a direct object. A direct object. So that's just it. So that's all about pattern 2. Okay, another thing is now, as you can see, your examples 2, 3, 4, like B, C, and D, they actually have what we call instances of complex verbal groups. Now, what do you mean by complex verbal groups? That is a verbal group that has more than one verb as its predicator. It has more than one verb, so it has the auxiliary and the lexical verb. So as you can see in pattern example 2, we have can do, one auxiliary, one lexical. Unlike, but look at example 1, we have just et, which is just one verb. So that is a simple verbal group. But can do, complex, playing, complex, would have shot, complex. Do we get it? It's as simple as that. So now, and just like we said about pattern 1, that it can take optional adverbials, your pattern 2 also can take optional adverbials. As a matter of fact, all patterns from pattern 1 to pattern 9 can actually take optional adverbials. All patterns can take optional adverbials. So let me give you an instance of one of them taking optional adverbial. So you have something like his father. Let's just look at this. Let's look at this, for instance. His father has angrily shut the door. Now, so look at it. Now, on a normal day, We could have said his father has shut the door angrily. Don't forget, I told you that optional adverbials are mobile. That means that they can be anywhere. Yeah, they are mobile or fluid. They can come anywhere. I can say angrily, comma, his father has shut the door. Yeah, let me just so that you could actually know that it's possible. Angrily, his father has shut the door. And I can also say his father angrily has shut the door. See another possibility, and I could finally say his father has shut the door angrily. So whichever way you want it, it's no problem. The summary is that your optional adverbials are mobile. They can come before the subject, between the subject and the predicator, after the predicator, after the object, wherever. And then, like I said again, also we can have more than one optional adverbial. So that's all about pattern 2 sentence. That's all about pattern 2 sentence. So let's go straight to pattern 3. Now, pattern 3, that is what your SPOO. Pattern 3, SPOO. That is your subject, your predicator, your object. Your object. And another object. Now, one thing you should note about this is that while this first object is known as the indirect object, this other one is known as the direct object. The direct object. So that's just it. So now, examples of pattern 3 sentences we have. Let's look at these. SPO, now OI, that's object indirect, and then OD, that's object direct. Do you get it? So don't be confused. So for example 1 or A, we have his mother sent him some foodstuffs. His mother sent him some foodstuffs. Do you see that? His mother, subject, sent, predicator, him, object indirect, and then some foodstuffs, object direct. And let's look at B. We have the manager paid our workers a huge sum of money. So the manager paid our workers a huge sum of money. The manager, subject, paid, predicator, our workers, object, and then that's object indirect, and a huge sum of money, object direct. Do we get it? Now let's look at the third example. We have my grandchild bought me a birthday present. So my grandchild bought me a birthday present. My grandchild, subject, bought, predicator, me, object indirect, a birthday present, object direct. I have lent Deborah my grammar notebook. I have lent Deborah my grammar notebook. Fifth example, we have I bring you good tidings. good tidings. I bring you good tidings. Now, looking at all of these examples, you would see that. So I is your subject here, bring is the predicator, you is your object indirect, and good tidings is your object direct. While the fourth example, we have I also as a subject, have learnt as a predicator, Deborah as your object indirect, and then my grammar notebook as your object direct. Do we understand that? Now, one of the things you should note about this pattern is that the predicator is known as a ditransitive verb, ditransitive verb. So that means that it can take two objects. Ditransitive verbs can take two objects. It can take the indirect object, and it can also take the direct object at the same time. Take note of that. Do we get it? So it can take two objects, the indirect and the direct. So, and then examples of ditransitive verbs we have, looks like we have sent, paid, bought, lend, bring. Send, pay, buy, lend, bring, make, give, tell. All of those are actually ditransitive verbs. Now, and then the indirect object actually is the first one that comes before the direct object. In this pattern, the indirect object comes before the direct object. Another thing is that the pattern can also take optional adverbs. Like I told you earlier, all of the patterns can take optional adverbs. So I didn't think I should bother myself about that again. You already understand the fact that optional adverbs can be anywhere in any sentence, and then they can be more than one also in a sentence. And then that's all about pattern 3 sentence. So difference between pattern 2 and 3. Pattern 2 takes one as a monotransitive verb, while pattern 3 as a what? A ditransitive verb. Pattern 2 takes one object because of its monotransitive verb. Pattern 3 takes what? Two objects because of its ditransitive verb. Do you get it? It's as simple as that. The object in pattern 2 is usually direct. The object in pattern 3 would be indirect object and direct object at the same time. And then for pattern 1, we said that one only has an intransitive verb. So that's all for today's class. We would look at the remaining patterns in our next class. Thanks for following all of these that we've taught today, and then I believe you've been able to learn one or two things beyond what you could have actually have learned on your own or just by reading alone. So this is an opportunity for you to keep learning what you see and you also hear. So you learn audio, you learn by our audio and visual combinations of class at the same time. Thanks, viewers. Have a nice day. Bye.